Hi, so my name is Mary Juetten, and I'm a recovering accountant, and I do have a JD, and I'm a data nerd, and I love key performance indicators, or KPIs, and I'm joined here by...
Hi, I'm Sam Glover. I'm the editor-in-chief of Lawyerist, and you may know my voice from our podcast, and yeah.
So what we're going to do for you today is we've got kind of like a little script we're going to go through here. What we're going to talk about today is a way, an approach, a methodology, whatever you want to call it, a framework, so that you can use data to enhance your practice. This morning, Jack talked about the missing 6 hours in your day. Well, part of what we're covering today deals with the 2 hours of business development, plus we're going to talk a little bit about collections. So right now, we want to start our session off by Sam is going to play a solo lawyer and is going to be the lawyer, like many of you, who feels like he's running and doing 1,000 things, but he's not making enough money and he's not serving enough clients. So Sam, tell us a little bit more about your practice.
So I'm a solo. I work all the time, endless hours. And I'm really busy, but I just never seem to have enough money, and I can't figure out the work-life balance piece. And I want to do pro bono, but I don't have any time for it. I know I need to make some changes. I know I need to figure this out, but I really don't know where to start. Help me, Mary.
OK. So Sam, what we're going to do is we're going to brainstorm your problems. And we're going to put it into 3 different categories. They're called buckets, and that's a technical term. And so the first bucket is the most important bucket, is your clients. Second bucket is cash. Third bucket is compensation. So tell us a little bit about your problems in these areas.
All of them?
No. Start with clients.
Yeah, I'm having a really hard time managing my clients' expectations. And I don't... I think we have a good relationship, and I think they're happy with me, but I'm not sure if they're satisfied with me.
OK, and tell us a little bit more about your cash situation.
I don't have a lot, is the problem. Most months I don't seem to have enough in the bank to cover my basic necessities.
OK, so you're not alone. One of the other presenters here who from the Reina Corp, I don't know if she's gone yet, but she talks about how large accounts receivable, or the list of all of the customers' amounts that are owing to small law firms are. So we took a look at Sam's accounts receivable, and this is what it looks like. So it's a simple list, and Clio and QuickBooks should be able to give you this information. But you don't want to know just how much is owing from a client. You want to know it by aging. So you want to know how much is current, how much is over 30 days, and so on. Sam, what do you think about this information?
I'm surprised. I'd never pulled this before, and I didn't realize that on average I bill about $20,000 a month, which is just not enough for me. Or $2,000 a month, right? I think we added a 0 to that.
I think it's 20,000.
OK, 20,000. So yeah, I clearly don't have enough money.
So this is an important data point for lawyers to look at. And what you need to do is take a look at the amount that is over 60 days. Because, Sam, do you have to pay your bills every month?
Yeah, and that's the problem. I feel like I'm always floating my checks.
OK, so what's your process then for billing? How do you bill?
Well, I send out the invoice.
And then what's your process for follow-up?
Yeah, no, I send out the invoice.
OK. So if you look at Sam's numbers, 60%, and that's the last 3 rows added together, 60% of his money is still outstanding after 60 days. And
you think I should probably follow up with them, huh?
Yes, you should. You should probably follow up with them. So that's a big number, and if you have monthly bills, your monthly bills are hopefully less than what you're billing, but the challenge is that Sam bills about $20,000 a month, yet his receivables are $50,000. So that's 2.5 months worth of money that's still sitting there waiting to be collected. So it's not good enough to record the time and bill the time, you have to collect the money. And that's what the report was showing this morning that Jack shared. So in this case, $30,000, so a month and a half's worth of billing is over 60 days. So do you take payments online?
I've thought about it, but it seemed hard.
Okay, so you're a Clio user, so you can use LawPay. And so a few tips for lawyers. You definitely want to do one of two things with your receivables. Either decide that you went to law school and you don't want to have anything to do with billing and accounting, and outsource it. Either outsource it to an admin, outsource it to a service. There's all kinds of cool technologies, but one of the caveats that I forgot to mention at the beginning is that we're going to talk about things today that you should do before you get technology. But this is one of the areas where you want to find a solution that allows you to collect quickly. So if you're not going to outsource it, you can still do a few other things if you're going to do it yourself. Set aside 30 minutes a week to follow up on your receivables. Bill when your matters are finished. Don't wait until the end of the month. If you can, collect retainers. Some states allow for evergreen retainers, which means it's just automatically replenished. And you need to collect money online. I've been a consumer of legal services several times over the last couple of years, and the ability for me to just go online, go into a secure portal, pay, and never have to deal with checks, and it's the game changer. So the other thing that you can do is if you can charge flat or fixed fees, you can make sure that you bill them up front. It's crazy in the law. Like so many other services demand money up front or a portion up front. As lawyers, it seems you have this wonderful expertise, but people seem shy to actually try to collect. And that's something like you don't even...
Yeah. What you're saying makes super sense. I don't ever carry cash, and I don't even know where my checkbook is. I bet my clients have the same problem.
Exactly. So if you can't walk into your office and then suspend your normal day-to-day life, which is what I find a lot of lawyers do. They're on their iPhone and their iPad and everything constantly until they walk into their office, and then they want to revert back to paper. So, okay. So now we're going to change gears, and we're going to talk a little bit about Sam's clients. So Sam, tell us about how you made this chart.
Well, I have a blank wall in my conference room, and I use Post-its and some markers, and I tried to put together like how I get clients by just laying out, here's what happens, and here's how they move through what I guess you could call a process.
So what we want to do here is we're going to take a deeper dive into Sam's new client process. And this is an example of how you can do this yourself. You don't have to hire a consultant to do this. You don't have to have any sort of fancy technology. You can just take your Post-its, take your pen, make sure that if you are using Post-its and walls and things, that it's a good kind of marker, that you're not going to make a mess. But other than that, there's no fancy technology involved in this. In fact, we want to make sure that you take a look at your processes before you buy any technology. What's the other thing? Sam, are you willing to change your process?
Since I didn't really even have a process before I started doing this, I guess, yeah, everything's on the table, and some of these pieces look a little weird now that I'm staring at it.
Yeah. So why would you meet with somebody before you did a conflict check?
Yeah, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense now that I look at it, and I realize that I'm meeting with everyone. Which means I'm spending a lot of time in meetings, and not all of my meetings turn into clients. So I'm spending a lot of time doing that, and then I'm creating more conflicts, and it's not really going anywhere.
If you put this up on the wall and take your biggest pain point and map it out, you can sometimes find simple things that you never even thought of. And if Sam in our example is a solo because he's up here by himself, but if you're working in a firm with other people, involve them in this exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this forward quickly. So Sam has created this new process. It's adapted from a bigger firm that's a friend of yours that you talked to. So this looks a little bit different than here's the last slide. So we had pretty simple process, but not very effective. Because Sam, in his pain points in the first slide, talked about how he needed new and more clients. So Sam, tell us a little bit about some of the changes that you made here.
Well, it's a little confusing, I know. But what I did is I tried, my clients and my potential clients like to call in, and because that's not a good use of my time before I know if I can help them, I hired somebody who can answer the phone for me, and they're going to field calls. I also put a contact form on my website, and both of those things have a series of questions for them to answer so that before I have to talk to anybody, I should have an idea of whether or not I can help them, and I've saved all that time on the phone. So I'm excited about that.
Okay, so what's this little green calendar software that you've put in there?
Well, I know you don't want me to jump right to technology, but I thought it might be easier to, instead of going back and forth on emails over and over and over again, I thought it might be easier if I could just get them to schedule it through something. And
Okay.
I've heard that there are scheduling apps and websites and things, and so I'm going to look into that, and I think I've found a couple that I want to use.
Okay, so we'll leave it on there as long as you promise that we're going to keep doing the process before you buy any technology.
Okay, deal.
Okay, so now the conflict check has moved before the actual meeting, but it seems like you have some meetings that are going to be phone consults. Do you think your clients are going to like that, or?
Yeah, my goal was I've got clients that are worth a lot of money, and I really want to take good care of them, and I've got clients that are worth less money, and I want to take good care of them too, but they're worth less, and so I want to put less time into them. I just said they're worthless.
Worth space
Yeah,
less.
worth space less. Be careful about my branding. So I'm going to try talking onto the phone to the clients with lower value cases, and I'm going to try meeting with the higher value cases so that I can sort of qualify them and make sure that I can help them.
Okay, and so you've set that as under 10,000 and over 10,000.
Yep.
And you're going to start doing some fixed fees too, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm a little
Okay.
nervous about getting burned, but we'll try it.
Okay. Okay, so same process, but we've put in some data, because this session was called Data-Driven Decisions. So whenever you make a change, remember that you're going to have to experiment, you're going to have to try a bunch of things, a bunch of different times. It's not all going to work, but what you're going to end up doing is having to look to data to make that decision. So Sam, tell us a little bit more about the data that you're going to get, which are the blue Post-its.
One of the frustrating things is I was just kind of going by feel, like what felt efficient and what didn't. And so the blue Post-its are the numbers that I'm going to start tracking, like where my clients have come from. I want to know how many phone calls, how many former client referrals I got. I want to know how many visits I get to my website that have turned into them, the number of calls and where they came from. But ultimately, right, it's like the number of consults I get and the number of new matters I open that are the ones that really control my profitability. So the blue are all the numbers I'm going to track, and I'm going to try and, I don't know, weekly or monthly or whatever you think. I'm going to
Probably weekly to start.
Okay.
If you're making some changes. So just to give an example, let's say, Sam, you go and you, as we know, you write and speak. Mm-hmm. So let's say in a week you get 5 leads that come from a speaking engagement. So a lead is somebody who calls Sam and says, I want to talk to you. And so you get 5 of those, and 3 of them turn into clients. So that's great. That's like a 60% rate of converting from a lead to a client. Then let's say the same week, you have 25 people who come through your website because you're paying somebody for SEO and you're doing all of that. And only 2 of them turn into clients. So that's about 8%.
Mm-hmm.
Not so good. So the difference between those two is huge. But if you just looked at it as in a week, 30 people wanted to talk to Sam about legal services, and he got 5, then that data isn't useful.
I guess I can start comparing the money I spend on my search consultants to the money it takes for me to get a speaking gig too.
Right, or a writing gig.
That seems good to know.
So the challenge would be if you just looked at the 5 just looked at the 5 clients out of the 30, you don't know what is actually driving the people, what source. So that's why it's super important to get from the very beginning, you have to know where did that potential new lead come from. So you can keep track of this in simple ways. You can keep track of it on paper if you want. You can keep track of it in an Excel spreadsheet. You could even keep track of it in a CRM, a customer relationship management system. But if you're not doing it already, start small. Okay. One other thing that we wanted to add is the number of failed checks. So like, are these leads that are coming in going to be somebody that you can't work for anyways?
Yep, I've added a couple of things here because I'm just not collecting enough information. And I need to create the list of questions for my admin to triage, but I need a better way to find out where they came from. So I'm trying to just make sure that I've got all the right stuff.
Okay, and you're going to ask all the people about some different things like where they came from.
Yeah, I want to know how they heard about my firm, like they're a former client or a current client, or they heard about me on the internet or something like that. I want to know all that stuff.
Okay. So now, time travel forward 2 months. So Sam has been testing his new client process, and it's a little bit different. So we've got the blue, which represent, again, the data. We've got the yellow, which is a few things that are different. So Sam's going to talk about them, the green Post-its.
Yeah, so now that I have some numbers, I started doing a few things and made some changes. So I'm not doing any more paid advertising. It wasn't working out for me. I know I've heard from other people that it's great, but from my client base, it just wasn't working. I do a lot of writing, but I hadn't been promoting it much, so I decided I'm going to start posting all of it on social media and try to make better use of that, of the people who already know me and are connected to me. And then I'm trying to take my presentations that I do, because I do some speaking, and I want to write them all up as articles and put them on LinkedIn and then share those to my other social media accounts. I'm firing my SEO guy. They're not doing anything for me. And I'm going to try charging for in-person consultations. And so I'm going to push more stuff to phone consults. And I think 10,000 was too low. So I think I'm going to move that threshold up to 15,000. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that...
Oh, I want to make sure I refer clients, too, to try and build those relationships with other lawyers instead of just declining to take their case.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you're charging also for the clients that are over 15,000, you've talked to some clients and they see the value in actually charging for that, because some lawyers want to give away a lot of free time, and as we heard from Jack today, 2 hours of business development, I'm not sure if that includes the free consults or not, but the idea that 2 hours a day is going to business development, if you can figure out a way to potentially charge the clients that are willing to pay for that and then give away the free time to clients.
Well, and I want to be clear, because I watched the keynote this morning, and I know I'm supposed to be doing free consults, but I'm doing those on the phone, because it's a lot easier to manage my time when I'm on the phone than it is for me to try and kick somebody out of my office.
Okay, so Sam has taken his original simple process and he's blown it up now so that he has all of these different data points that he can collect. He made the decision about firing his SEO person not based on a gut feel, but based on the actual numbers that his leads and eventually actual clients weren't coming from that source.
You used a cost of acquiring a client, I think is what you called it?
Yes. So if you went through here and tried to figure out how much does it cost to acquire a client, that's your time, so Sam's time. Let's say he gave away an hour and he bills at $300. It would be the $300. It would be the cost of his SEO divided by the number of new clients. So if he only got one new client and he paid $1,000 a week for SEO, now all of a sudden the cost of acquiring that client is $1,300, and you haven't even put in kind of any sort of marketing, overhead, other things that you might be doing. So there's lots of key performance indicators that you can look at, but it's often people get overwhelmed by it. So if you just start with the simple approach and start with the process before you make any changes or investments, then you'll be able to make these tweaks, because this is new process number 3.
Yeah, we're getting there, though.
In real
life. I feel like we're getting close. But you also reminded me of something when we were talking about figuring out how much money I'm spending on marketing, which is that the time I spend going out to coffee, the time I spend at lunches, all of that networking time, that's potentially billable time. And I'm not billing by the hour anymore, but my time still has value. So you got me to start tracking that time. And so now I can calculate the cost of those word-of-mouth referrals and things like that, which I hadn't really thought about before. I just thought networking was something that I did for marketing activities, and I didn't really try to put a dollar number on it.
Yes, because if you have that information on the triage questions that you have that your admin is now going through instead of you getting on the phone with somebody, if you have something in there that tracks where the people come from, and if you find that you get a lot of referrals from, let's say, a specific group that you're going to speak to, that's important for you when you make your plan of where you're going to spend your networking time. Because it is a fallacy that if you bill flat fees or fixed fees that you don't have to track your time anymore, because of course you need to figure out how much to charge. Like Sam said at the beginning, he was a little bit nervous about fixed fees because he didn't want to get burned. Well, the only way to figure out if you're making money on fixed fees is to go through and see how much time you put in and then compare it and see, and then adjust your fees.
And it turns out that my admin is way nicer than me when she answers the phone. And so she doesn't cost as much as me, and she converts better than I do. So that was a good purchase, or a good hire.
And they're
good purchase. I just bought one. I just bought some. Yeah.
Okay, so we're buying admins. Excellent.
I'll take 3. Yeah.
But it is the way that you can leverage yourself is by delegating. And lawyers, I did go to law school. You learn to not delegate in law school, and you learn not to work well with others. And so, not that I was looking at Sam when I said that, but the whole idea is that if you can delegate the tasks that are not legal work, which answering a phone and asking a set of questions, you're not dispensing legal advice, you're just getting information. If you can use some of the simple things like using a Google document or Excel document that everyone in your office can share, where you record where the sources of these, the calls are. So this is Sam's entire firm with some data. So on the right-hand side is Sam's processes, and then the data's on the left. So Sam, you want to talk a little bit more about, we've just done the first one, so we've only scratched the surface in 35 minutes.
I just sort of flipped it. And my processes are down the middle here. And I tried to, up till now we've been talking about my marketing and intake piece, but that's all the top kind of 2 levels there. But I still have to work on the cases, obviously, and then I have to bill them and I have to close them. And so I just wanted to arrange it so I can see everything I do at my firm and lay it all out there.
Yeah, so what's your plan as far as attacking these different processes? Are you going to do all of them at once or one at a time?
Well, I think I better take it one at a time, but I guess it would also be helpful to as I collect the numbers, maybe I can start figuring out if there's any really inefficient parts of the process, and maybe I should go after those first. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the idea is that your processes do build off of each other, but any firm, and actually any kind of professional business, consultants, whatever, is going to have this same process. You find a client, you engage with them, you do the work, you bill them, and then you close the matter. But one of the things that I wanted to point out in the blue data, is the NPS, and that's the Net Promoter Score. I thought we went through this. Apologies, I was trying not to have any acronyms. But Jack talked about it this morning, so I guess it's okay. So the Net Promoter Score is really important, and as lawyers, I would want to know if my clients would refer me, because it is so much less expensive to sell to an existing client, so upsell them, or if somebody has your name because somebody else has referred them, then they're basically going into your process as a phone call or filling out a contact form on your website. There's none of that business development time that has to go in to getting them as a lead. So it's the same for any business, and I do believe that as law firm owners, you're all business people. So it's smart business to make sure that you're finding out whether your clients are happy with your services.
So Mary, I started doing this, and I was a little embarrassed and worried about it because I used to go around telling people how much my clients loved me. and so I was kind of nervous when I started doing this, but I was pretty pleased that my Net Promoter Score was positive, but it was only a 5. And so I feel like I need to do work there. But I wanted to ask you, do you think it would make sense for me to ask for Net Promoter Score earlier too, so that maybe I can try and fix some of those negative or those lower scores while I'm representing people?
Well, the different lawyers that I've talked to do it different ways. Like if your engagement is going to be long, then I would suggest early on reaching out early on, and finding out what they think of you. And obviously, Net Promoter Score should never be done anonymously, because otherwise then you can't follow up with people. So with a Net Promoter Score of 5, I would definitely start reaching out, and then make sure that you're asking the question, a follow-up question of why or why not, because if somebody gives you a 1 or a 6 as opposed to a 10, you want to know why or why not. In this case, why not? Why are they not willing to recommend you? So that feedback, while it can be a little tough to read, is valuable, because it might be something as simple as maybe your new admin isn't working out, and that person isn't responsive, isn't, whatever. It can be any number of things, but the one thing, like any metric, you have to be willing to change. So there's no point in doing any of this unless you're willing to change what you're doing.
And so, I know you said not to jump to technology, so, but I did some Googling, and there are some websites out there that look like it, and they make it really easy to do Net Promoter Score, but I didn't use them. I'm just sending an email. And when I send my closing email, I ask them for the rating, but I'm following up. And
Okay.
so I'm trying to get a score from everybody, and I've even called a few people to ask them, although I suspect that they're afraid to give me a bad score then.
So, I mean, we all get the Net Promoter Scores all the time. Like, you check into a hotel, 5 minutes later, you've got do you want to give them a smiley face or a sad face? Like, that's a form of Net Promoter Score. So I would reach out to people once, and then if you don't hear anything from them, I wouldn't pester them. You can sometimes work it, if you have shorter processes in your firm, you can work it into the closing interview. There's a firm they're here actually. They're in New Orleans, and they are wills and estates. And what they do is they hand an iPad to the client to do the Net Promoter Score in their last meeting when they're getting everything signed. And that way, the person's just sitting there. You're not doing anything, so they can fill in the score. They've been doing Net Promoter Score for years, so they have more questions than just the how likely are you to recommend.
I guess I could just do that on paper while I'm practicing before I adopt the technology.
You could do Net Promoter Score on paper.
It's a good idea.
You could also just have, you could have the admin person phone to follow up, so then that maybe you don't have to hear the not so good rating. I know that firms where they're representing people for a longer period of time, what they do is they'll do like follow-up scores. So if you get 6 and under, they will call like 3 months later to say, have we addressed your concerns, and how would you rate us now? So it's a powerful tool. It's a great feedback tool. But you can start adopting technology once you've gone through one of your processes, and then you can experiment with that technology.
Just don't do what my car repair place does, which is they ask for your score, and then they tell you that they can only get 10s, or it affects their salary.
The Safeway, the grocery store by my house, does that. They circle it, and they're like, please go home and do this survey. So once I thought, okay, I will go home and do it. But it was so long. They wanted to know all these different detailed questions. It wasn't simple. So I gave up in the middle, even though the person who had served me was wonderful. But that's the lesson here is people have survey fatigue, so keep it simple and stick with just the one question, but I think you should have why or why not, just not the number. Although you could also just do the smiley face, sad face, but that's not my recommendation.
Could you use like the doctor one, like how on a scale of frowny face to smiley face, how much does this hurt?
Yeah, and we keep drawing parallels to doctors, but it's kind of the same. I know you're all at Clio, so we don't have to say anything about the need for a practice management system, but it's the same idea. Like you can't run a business without these systems, but the system is not just technology. It's having a process. And you can't build anything, you can't do anything without a series of steps. So those are the steps in the yellow, and the data's in the blue. And if some of you are thinking, okay, well, that's easy for her to say because she used to be an accountant and she's, it doesn't matter. If any of you have planned a wedding, a children's birthday party, or an anniversary party, whatever, that's a project. It's the same skills. You can do this, is what I'm trying to say. It's the same skills that go into it. It's just planning and making sure that you make this part of what you do. So if you don't want to do this in your firm, then you find someone in your firm who's all jazzed about this, who loves process. And I have a friend who's an attorney in Arizona, and she found somebody to be her admin that loves process. So they have, every month, they meet and they go over a different process, and then every week they meet and they go over their data. So Sam was saying at the beginning, what should I do about my accounts receivable? Even if you just get started, it's that little incremental change. You get started by putting 30 minutes on your calendar that you're going to go and you're going to pull your report from Clio and you're going to look and start with, it's kind of like my day. I always start with the hardest task. And so it's the same thing. Start with your oldest receivable. And if you can't collect it, consider sending it out to somebody who can help with collections. I know lawyers don't like to do this.
I have a friend named Bruno.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
He gets it done now. That was how I improved my process.
Not in the script. But in all seriousness, lawyers are very reluctant to go to collections because they feel like it might have an impact on a bar complaint or it might have an impact on your NPS. So you have to decide, is this worth it to me or not? And there are technological solutions. There's one called Funbox, which helps you in terms of collections. So this very fuzzy slide is...
My bad.
No, it's okay. It's because we blew it up because it was smaller.
Yeah, no, I found an app for my iPad because I wanted to. I was frustrated that I could only play with my Post-it notes because I feel like I'm getting the hang of this now. Like I think I'm good with the whole organizing stuff. But so I started doing it on my iPad so that I can fiddle around with it no matter where I am and I don't have to be in the office.
Yeah, so this is a free app. It's called Post-it Notes, Post-it Plus app, sorry. And you basically can put the Post-its up on the wall, take a picture, and then you can move them around on your phone. So it's kind of a fun app. It's free. So that type of technology you should go get in the beginning. So this is the approach that we've been using. This is kind of high level, but it's simple, and you can use this approach with your firm, at the firm level, at your practice level if you're in a bigger firm, or at a process level.
Yeah, I'm stepping out of persona now,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Okay, Sam is no longer Sam the lawyer.
Yeah. No, I think if you've seen other sort of like design thinking process and stuff, you'll recognize it in here a little bit. But yeah, you start at your firm goals. Right, what are you trying to accomplish? Whether it's how much money you want to make this month, whether it's whether it's big or small or whatever, you start with your goals, and you use that to kind of frame where your problems are, where your pain points might be. And we talked about that in terms of like bottlenecks, right? So Are you struggling with business development and marketing? Are you struggling with getting stuff done? Are you struggling with administrative stuff? And that's the third column there. Those are all of the things where I think most of you will have those pain points. And then sit down, map it out, meet with your team, and come up with ideas, get the numbers, and then work out the processes to streamline and make it more efficient and more effective.
Yeah, and I think that you do need to start with your biggest problem. Don't start with the simplest little tiny issues. Start with your biggest problem and tackle that one first, because it likely is having the most impact on either your own compensation, which is a column that we didn't really talk about, it's having an impact on your team or your clients, and it's most certainly having an impact. Your biggest problem will be whatever is impacting your bottom line and your cash. On the compensation side, for small firms, I don't want to repeat everything that Jack said this morning, but it's all about time management, and it doesn't matter if you use billable hours. You still have to take time in the day to organize, to develop business, and to serve your clients, whether you're billing them based on hours or not. So time management is something that, as attorneys, you can go out there and look to other professions. I'm married to an engineer, so I like to say, instead of think like a lawyer, think like an engineer. So if you know any engineers, talk to them. If not, go online and take a free project management course, because that's what this is in the end. And I know Sam mentioned design thinking, and
I didn't want to scare everybody, but I want to throw it out there.
Yeah, so in the early 90s, I did process reengineering. That's what they used to call it when I was a consultant at Pricewaterhouse. And it's the same as design thinking. And I did a little talk on the fact that it all goes back to this woman whose name was also Mary, who created something in she was born in the 1800s, and she created all of the new way of thinking and approaching management back then. So design thinking is the new
process reengineering
is the new whatever. But the whole point of today was to explain to you that this is really, it's simple. It's a process, it's an approach, and you don't have to get some fancy technology. You should look at your process, and I've hosted panels where you have general counsel from huge companies like Intel and Nike and these other companies and Microsoft, where they talk about process before technology. There's no point automating a bad process. So if there's only one thing that you take away from today, is that if you look at your process, you need to figure out what you're going to do, and the only way to do that is to get the data. If Sam would have continued to pay, now you're back being Sam, the lawyer.
Yeah.
If Sam would have continued to pay, what were you paying that SEO guy?
$10,000 a month.
$10,000 a month, yet he's getting 2 clients out of that, versus going and speaking at something where, what did you pay for speaking?
Just a couple phone calls, and some prep time.
So you wouldn't, unless you break down what is making up those new clients, where are they coming from, you would never make these changes. So a couple of years ago, I spoke here at Clio with Billy Tarasio. Where is she? There she is. And we talked about KPIs, and which is sort of the same as what we were talking about here, but Billy's a great person to go talk to about the changes that she made once she got good data. Some of them are scary, and some of them, you find out things that you don't necessarily want to know about your firm or your practice. But like everything in life, it's just onwards. So
I would say that I think one of the most important things is, if you're not sure where to start, the place to start is putting a weekly appointment, or a monthly, but probably weekly appointment on the calendar for your entire team. And it doesn't have to be long, it can be an hour, when this is what you do. And it needs to be a really high priority appointment. I mean, if your firm is big enough, then you don't need everybody there for it. But and what you do is you try to get your head around your processes. What are the processes that we have? Ours at Lawyerist is Every other Monday, I think, we reserve an hour or two to work on our operations manual. And everybody, we get together and we talk about what are the procedures manuals that need updating based on have we changed doing things? Are there any experiments that we've tried that we need to put down in writing? We do that every other Monday, I think it is. And every week, Aaron and I sit down and look at all of our data that we've collected over the last week. I gather it on Monday, we sit down on Tuesday. You have to make time for this, because if you don't, then all of the administrative stuff that you can't make more efficient because you aren't doing this is going to be the thing that takes up your time. So taking the time to do this will save time on other things. And you just have to put that on the calendar. And if you aren't sure what to do during that time, just start figuring it out. You know, I was playing a dopey lawyer at the outset who was kind of clueless about stuff. But all of us are clueless when we start a thing. You're not going to do it perfectly. Just get a whiteboard. We made these a little bit whiteboardy and post-it notey on purpose because that's really what you need to do: is stand in front of a whiteboard, draw, stick post-its up there, and it will start to come together.
Yeah, and flashing back to the 90s, we would have these meetings, and we were doing this re-engineering of a process at a college, and people would come in who ran the department, and then they'd watch, and the people in the department showed them how things were actually done. Because the VP would be sitting there going, "Oh no, I didn't realize that was the process." That was kind of like with your conflict checks, like why would you do them afterwards? Well, there's some things that you have that might be going on in your firm that you have no idea that that's the way that it's happening. And depending on the size of your firm, and if you're a solo, then hopefully you do know everything that's going on.
We had a number of tasks where the procedures manual was give it to someone and then they take care of it. And that gets a little scary when you think about losing that person.
We can
We're
pick
out of
it up
time.
tonight.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Really appreciate you coming.